Hello everyone, it is time for a weekly live stream, and today we are going to be talking about the last time you're going to see the reef looking like this. It's going to change, and someone had suggested this week that I share the stories behind the many corals in the tank. Some logistical reasons make that kind of impossible. I mean, the only thing I could literally do is film things individually and build a video. I cannot move things around in the live stream. The cords aren't long enough. A second person would really be useful in a scenario like this, but it still would be a tightrope act, and it may not even work. It could mess us up. So what you're looking at right now is live video of the Reef, the 400-gallon. It's over 7.5 years old, and it is running through a Nikon D500. A few people asked me what camera you're using now. And then I am on a webcam that's just a Logitech C920, I think it is. And it's, it's all right, whatever. But what the hope is that I can zoom in with that camera, and we're going to be messing around with that. And hopefully you enjoy the experience, and we will zoom in on certain corals, and I'll talk about each one that we can see from the front. Like I said, I mean, I ran extension cords and all this stuff, but the HDMI wire that goes from the Nikon to the computer, I don't know if that's 4 feet long. And so I would have to move the computer and the camera, and I just don't know that I can do it. I do want to mention that, I mean, I've been kind of getting this ready for like the last hour, and it's only 72 degrees in here, and I'm just sweating. So I apologize for that. It's just, life of a podcaster, I guess you could say. A lot of people call this a podcast, so let's call it that. News-wise, there's not a lot to report. The reef itself is kind of on autopilot. I checked alkalinity a couple days ago, and it was still right around 9.5 or 10, which is where I like it to be. So, and I had mentioned a coral. Actually, I'll move my circle to the other corner. So on the far left side, there is a coral that looks like Acropora, and next to it is a white spot that's turning brown. That was some death that started last week and has been inching its way across. And there's no rhyme or reason why it's happening. It's just happening. So anyway, we can start getting a close-up here. What I think I'll do is lose my circle so you guys can see the full screen, because I will be behind the camera to do some of this. I will not be able to see your comments because I will be behind the computer as well. But I did want to start to give you some kind of a narration of what's going on. So thank you all. Let me really quickly acknowledge a ton of you. And turn off notifications on my computer screen too. That's important. So we'll do it until this evening. All right. Hey, Andrea, Mike. That's 2 moderators. They're watching you guys. And then I see Brian and Stefan and Mark and Paul, the old reefer. Afonso, Travis, Lynn, Nick, Paul from UK. Kyle is here. Ryan, Cliffy Poos. I love that name. Elmer, Hillbilly Reefer, Aquapuncture, and Eric and Regis. And so I'm going to stop right there and start talking about corals, because I think that'll be nice. All right, let me get a sip. And no word on the new mugs yet. I haven't heard or seen anything. So we'll have to see. Here we go. So we can just start off right in the middle of the tank. I think that's a good starting point. And there will be a little bit of shaking as I'm doing stuff, but hopefully it won't be too annoying. So right here, let's see if I can do this. This coral right here is called a scrolling pavona. And it's also called a cactus pavona. Focus on that a little bit again. And I believe we are shooting this in 4K right now too, by the way, guys. You can notice that it's making like different blades. The growth tip is the lighter area. The core itself is kind of in a tan color. The person whose tank I got it from, it was actually yellow. So if I had better water parameters, this coral would have a lot more yellow in its core. But the brown look is kind of normal. I got this from Ryan's 1,000-gallon reef a few years ago. Or maybe even from the tank he had before that, it's possible. But I definitely got it from Ryan. So it is one of, it's the showpiece in my tank. Let's see. Oh, we can go even further. I didn't know we could go in this tight. Let's try that again. It's kind of fun to do this. And then you're going to start seeing all the flaws in my tank. I can't wait to read the comments. Anyway, very nice coral. You don't see polyps extending. You'll see a texture in the actual veins of the coral, like a bunch of striations, but that's about it. The next coral we can talk about, let's zoom back out for a second. And why don't we talk about the Shadowcaster? So we will talk about this coral right here. Let me kind of center it before I zoom this time. And we'll move the focus thing around on my screen so I can see what I'm doing here. So this right here is an Acropora, and it's called the Shadowcaster. It's a name I gave it because it was casting a giant shadow and everything underneath was dying. So I figured, all right, what a great name. And it was actually kind of a cool name. I like the sound of it. So I've been taking some pictures of it lately, and I'm going to zoom in some more so you can kind of see the tips. This one does have polyps, but they're very tiny that extend out, and I usually only see them at night. Here's a nice growth tip that's happening. The Shadowcaster itself, I don't know who I got it from. I asked all the logical people. I really don't know. And the people that have compared their corals said, well, I think it's this. That's not what I have. I have something that doesn't look like that. So as far as I mean, I'm not trying to rule anyone out. I just haven't found the original owner. And I've had this coral for a long time. And these new tips you see bursting out, they've been bursting out since I installed the Sky. Now, granted, the tank was going through some issues at the time. And even as I was installing the lights, I was losing some corals. But the Shadowcaster has put out a bunch of new tips. And as I back out, you'll see more and more of those little branches popping out of the tips. And it could, in time grow into something really large again, like it was in the past. However, what's happened this time is that we're about to attack the tank and cut a lot of things back. So this giant thing will be cut in half for sure. Inside of it, you'll notice there's a bunch of my nano nems. I told you guys I have way too many of them. There's about 50 in this reef. You're going to see them everywhere. Don't judge too harshly. I'm going to be in there ripping those off one after another with some dental tools so I don't damage them, but we'll remove them from the reef because they don't belong in the reef at all. Let's talk about the Sea Bay Anemone. So the Sea Bay Anemone, I believe, I probably focused on the coral. I believe the Sea Bay was acquired about 6 years ago. I'm not 100% certain on that. But I remember when I bought it, I was at a trade show. I got it from Paul Whitby, who was selling corals. And he said, I got this weird looking bubble tip. And I said, well, I love bubble tips. That's my favorite kind of creature to get. And so I bought it from him, and it was very small. It kind of looked like a supersized Recordia. And I put it inside the anemone cube, and it didn't do well. So I'll zoom in some more. I know you guys love seeing the skunk clownfish. I'll turn down. Oops. The Sea Bay itself, so what ended up happening was as it was growing in, I discovered there's no bubble tip at all. It's a Sea Bay. I believe it's a Sea Bay Malu, and it's got little blue tips on the end of every single tentacle. And I don't feed it directly. I just feed the tank a mixture of frozen slurry every single night, and this anemone gets whatever the clowns bring it or whatever it inhales out of the water. And I've had it now for a number of years. And it is another showpiece in my tank. And then you'll notice there's a whole bunch of those nano nems. And look at those things. They're like long tentacle anemones. And look, the skunk's living in them too. They don't care. You give them tentacles, they'll go live in it. So they're actually really pretty. In this right here, they're not so green because of my lighting spectrum. If I had the tank in the normal light schedule, it would be much more green. They don't have bubbles, but there are some in my tank that actually do have bubbles. That's why they are actually bubble tips. Let's see if we can see any bubbles. There's some in the background. I see them right there. So I'm going to lock this and then hit the focus button. Let's see if I can turn this up a little bit. So I can't zoom in any tighter because of the distance I'm at. You can see the bubbles right there. So they are literally bubble tips. It's just stuff in my tank doesn't have bubbles for whatever reason. A lot of people say too much flow, but I don't see them just blowing over. And there's spots where it's deep down in the rockwork, and there's parts where it's up high in the flow, and there's no difference. They just do what they want, and some will have bubbles and some won't, for whatever reason. The yellow Tang that's hanging out inside all the tentacles as if nothing was dangerous at all. I got her several years ago. It was actually a trio, and the two large ones picked on the third one, and that one didn't make it. And then I had the two, and they were always fighting. And so I called them Frickin' Frack. Let's see if I can get that just, turn this back down again. There we go, looks a little bit better that way. Hopefully it's not too dark. So anyway, the yellow tang is a very healthy specimen. The smaller one that was getting beat up the most, I mean, it was constantly chased. It died about 6 months ago. Don't know why. I just found it on the bottom of the tank one day, and that was the end of that. I couldn't explain it, but it never looked that great or healthy, and the other one in comparison was perfect, just like the purple tang was perfect. So go figure. All right, let's talk about this big old chalice that's behind my humongous pajama cardinalfish. So this chalice, I'm going to zoom in to the actual nub that started it all. So the dead center of your screen, whatever you're looking on, whether it's a phone or a computer or a tablet, that bump right in the dead center is where the first frag started. It was 1 inch in size. And then this thing grew out in both directions and got much, much larger. And all the side on the right that's covered in anemones is actually dead skeleton that used to be chalice. And everything on the left side is healthy. So again, those anemones must go. Now, why did that side of the chalice die? Because the sea bay used to be closer to the front, and the sea bay would rub up against it and just burn the heck out of it to create space for itself. And then later the sea bay moved, and I put it back where I wanted it, sort of, and it kind of tucked in the back of the reef, and it stayed there ever since, which is great. But the damage is already done, and so this chalice here, you know, it has some beautiful areas, but there's definitely some loss. I'll show you a little close-up of some loss just for fun, because why hide anything on this channel, right? So you can see it. All right, let's talk about the Australian tongue coral. So this right here, sorry, I'm trying to lock the thing so it doesn't shake. This one right here is about 12 or 14 inches long. Has a whole bunch of little green tentacles that come out. All along the top ridge is a whole line of mouths. And it, again, is just a filter feeder. It catches whatever it catches. I've never tried to directly feed it. I've had to occasionally move it. It used to hide in the back of my reef, but I decided one day to move it to the front. And so I put it in the largest bowl I had handy, which is like a pie pan, and it wouldn't fit because it's too long and it was hanging off the other end. But because of the water content, the skin was hanging way down in the pie pan. It was a clear pan so I could see. And you know, it was stretching across the skeleton, and it was just like this weird bulbous thing. And then when I put it back in the water, it kind of pulled itself together. Now this coral has the ability to superinflate itself and make itself look about twice its size, give or take. And that way it could try to move, but it has nowhere to go. There's nowhere in my reef for this thing to travel. It just becomes ginormous and realizes that it can't move, and it fluffs back down to its normal size again. All right, let me go check the comments and see how we're doing. I'll be right back to the camera. All right, let's see. All right, somebody said audio is fine. That's good. There's no fan, but I am. Oh, you know what you're probably hearing if there was some audio, some weird stuff. I was under the air conditioner vent, which felt amazing. So forgive me for that. All right, let's see. All right, now we'll go on to the next part. I just want to make sure we were good and everything was looking right. I cannot really do anything about the mic, so I apologize. But I do enjoy the AC. I'm not going to lie to you. All right. The next thing we'll look at, more nanonems. These right here are, these brown things are Palythoa. And these are literally the things that are super toxic and super dangerous and could kill people. And you know, in the movies they always show like some guy's got a tank with like a puffer fish, or you know, or they'll say they got lionfish venom or whatever. And you know, it's this kind of stuff. They're like, this is what we use to undo that guy. But I've had these corals since 2002. It's not like I'm in love with them, but you know, they've been with me a long time. So they, you know, I mean, almost 20 years. Wow. The discs themselves can be bright green under blue light, which is very pretty. Let's see if we can zoom in tighter. Nope, that's as tight as we can go because that's where my camera is. But you can see them. They're kind of okay. And then behind them, which we can't see at all because they're standing so tall, there is a hint of a maize coral hiding there, which I need to rescue from all these polyps and those anemones. So, Over here, I have a couple of Duncans, and I'd like to move this camera closer, actually. I'm going to regret this decision, right? All right, here we go. Here we go. Everyone hold their breath. That'll get me away from the air conditioner vent, too. So now we can get a little bit closer. So these Duncan corals, there's 2 colonies there, one in the front and one behind it. They're 2 different styles, and I know one of them for a fact started from 3 little heads, and there's probably 30 or 50 or 100. I don't even know. I have no idea how many are in there. Sometimes it closes up, and I've never even considered trying to count all the dots, you know, the mouths. And then behind it, and so I've had, again, I don't have all the dates, but it's been a long time. This back here is a Turbinaria, which is a LPS coral, and you can see it just looks like a bunch of Aptasia. But the Turbinaria is actually very nice. It's a scroll coral, not really, that's not true. It's a pagoda cup, that's what it is. I'm saying the wrong thing. Pagoda cup is what this is. I'm sure someone's correcting me in the chat as we speak. And then above it, you can see the Tracy Morgan Gorgonian, which I have been fragging and shipping pieces to people. Turn up the brightness here so you can see a little bit better. There's some reflections in the room, so. But that coral there came from the 20,000 gallon reef tank in Long Island. And I came home with something, I don't know, maybe 3 inches tall. It has grown almost to the surface several times. And I just trim off some pieces and give them to people when they happen to be nearby. That's Spock in the frame. Spock is my Nassau Tang. She has been with me since 2004, as has the purple Tang. And she has one bad eye, which some of you saw in the video I did with the fish vet. But Spock is using her good eye to chase food and to swim around the tank. She doesn't seem to be out of sorts or scratching or irritated. There's no damage on the eye other than the eye just doesn't look right. But it's not a medical condition, and I have this bad feeling that if the vet were to come back, she would want to scoop it out, and I don't really want to do that to my fish if I don't have to. The Cleaner Wrasse I got a couple of years ago, and I remember doing a video about it because I was telling everyone that thing isn't going to live long, but I wanted to show it to you, and it actually cleans all the fish all the time. And the funny thing is, everyone on that video chimed in saying, what do you mean it's difficult to keep? I've got one, and it seemed like everyone had a Cleaner Wrasse. Now this one is not from Hawaii. The one from Hawaii has a purple stripe in it, and this one is just a blue fish. While we're looking over here, there's my coal tang with a white tail, and it's got these markings on its face some damage to its face. It's been like that for some time. The fish vet didn't have a solution at the time other than feed way more nori. So and then when I talked with someone else, they said, yeah, you're not feeding enough nori. I'm trying to get that fish. She's hiding. But anyway, she doesn't want to show off her scars. That's what it is. But then when Paula was here from the Dallas World Aquarium, she said to me, oh, well, that's definitely HLLE. But none of my other fish have it. None. So I don't understand how that's even possible. And she also said it may have to do with lighting. And I thought, well, that's interesting because I just switched out my lights. So could this fish suddenly get better now that it's no longer under metal halides and it's under LEDs? So we'll find out. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that area is just fatty tissue that's gone, and I don't know if it'll ever fill back in again. I don't know how it could. But that coal tank's been with me for about 4 or 5 years. This hammer coral, I've lost a lot of it. The coral itself was probably double the volume of heads, and I have been losing heads of that hammer for the last 6 months. Just one head here, one head there. I actually thought the copper band was doing the damage. And then I thought, well, maybe it's because I throw the food in the tank directly over this area and it lands on there and all the fish go to eat the food and they're hurting the hammer. I really don't know. But I have less, but I still have some. And when you look at it, I mean, it doesn't look like the coral's not healthy. It's actually nice and fluffy and happy. But then you'll have one little head that just suddenly seems miserable. And you're like, what the heck's going on? And then you'll see, fish nipping at, the damaged one. But all the rest of them continue to do well. So that one's kind of a mystery I can't really explain. What else do we have over here? Nothing. Nothing. There's the occasional actual zoanthid in here somewhere. Oh, I've got an Nacropora down here. So let me fix my angle here if I can. This whole camera is like at a weird angle. So this right here is an Acropora. Not Acropora, a Nacropora. And I had quite a few pieces on the sand bed. I shipped some of those out when I did my livestock packs because I thought somebody else could appreciate something bright green in their tank. It's a relatively easy coral, doesn't need a ton of light. It can be down low, it can be up high. And this little guy's been doing fine, but as you can see, that anemone needs to go. So many anemones. All right, let's work our way to the other side of the tank. And I think what I'll do is I'll move the tripod again. And see if we can get this thing a little bit more level, maybe. Okay, so this side of the tank actually has a lot going on. We'll start with the bad first. How about that? So up here, I'm to the left of the scrolling pavona. This right, I'm trying to get it, hang on. That whole oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving this thing way too much. Apologize. It's so much more obvious when you're handling it while it's zoomed in. This coral right here is all dead. That right there was a giant piece of Drew's acro, and that was one of the things that RTN'd about 10 weeks ago, something like that. But on top of it is my final branch of the coral that is actually still alive. So I had it laying on the sand for probably about 12 weeks. I pulled it off at the time so that the wildfire wouldn't land on it and left it in the sand. And it is hanging in there, and I just put it on top of the dead skeleton because I needed a spot, and that was like a perfect little shelf. This coral came from Drew, my friend in Dallas. He sold it to me as a little tiny frag many years ago, and then it grew sort of like a lightning bolt, sort of like the scar on Harry Potter's forehead. And it was just the weirdest thing. It wouldn't turn into a coral. It was just like this zigzag thing. And then when I put it in my reef, it ended up growing into 2 beautiful tables. And then last year, I lost a big piece of it for all of a sudden. And then this year, I lost the other big piece of it, and then I'm down to this twig. But this twig is actually something Duane will probably really appreciate. It's like the perfect thing for him to plant on a coral and make him in a reef and watch it turn into something bigger over time. So let's hope for the best so we don't lose the last of Drew's acro. And ironically, I believe Drew doesn't have any of it. So it's like this is the last piece, unless there's some in Duane's tank. Now this coral in the back, this is called a Milka Coral. And I don't know if I can do this. Let me see if I can mess with my white balance. So the Milka Coral actually looks kind of that color. And it's a very purplish coral. It's called Milka because it's the same purple color as the chocolate bar Milka from Europe. And it's a Stylophora, and there's like a million polyps. I mean, could you imagine trying to count those? Look at them all. And this is actually a really large colony in my tank that has been growing steadily over the last 4 years. And at the time, we cut off a big piece of it, and this is how much grew from the little piece that was actually started down here, and it grew up, and it's all leaning to the right, to the left. Now, why is it leaning like that? Well, the idea is that, make sure this wire stretches far enough, that the RFGs way over there are pushing the water across the tank and blowing the Milka this way toward the overflow box. I don't know. It's nothing, not everything else is blowing to the left, but this coral definitely is growing to the left. Underneath this coral and down lower are the MP60s pushing from this direction to the right. So I'm not really sure why that is growing like that, but it is. And then to its left are these hideous brown sticks that I just can't wait to get rid of. But ironically, I'm going to zoom way in so you can see what I'm looking at. You can see new growth, and it's actually purplish and pretty. Or bluish. I'm just like, what? You ugly stick, all this time I've been hating on you, and you actually were supposed to be a different color all this time? So this will be cleared out, and maybe the tops will be saved and planted as new little fraglets. We'll see. And then this is the area I was talking about that was dying last week, and it's spread to that much over the last 7 days since the video. So about a good 2 inches was already cooked when we did a live stream a week ago, and here we are, 7 days after that, and it's been a few more inches, but there's still quite a bit of it left. This is called the lime in the sky acro, and this coral again, I mean, I can't overlook it. This one is also growing toward the left, right toward an MP60. Which is kind of funny to me. I would think that it would blow the coral the other way, but it's more like the ebb and flow is pulling it possibly toward the direction of the vortex pump. The lime in the sky looks a lot like a green slimer, except it has a blue hue inside the skin, which you're not going to see from this angle. But there's a little bit of color there. But it's a green coral with like light blue hints inside the base, the actual area between the polyps. So I've had the lime in the sky. I actually bought it as a slimer, green slimer, Acropora youngi, but it didn't survive, but this one did. So I call it a limer instead of a slimer. Then back here is a Palythoa, just a very boring one. I got it from Frank's Tanks. I probably got it a year ago. And it has just grown bigger and bigger. It's kind of one of those corals that some hobbyists don't like. They're worried that they'll spawn and release little polyps elsewhere in the tank. That's not happened to my tank at all. Then over here is an acro hiding in the background that I'm almost certain I got from Dave Botwin in California. He sent me home with a bunch of corals years ago, and I think this was one of them, and it's just kind of neglected. In front of it is another type of blue tort. I recently trimmed a piece off. That's why you can see a big white hole there on it, or bare spot. But that spot is healing, because you can see their skin. It's not like bare skeleton. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it. This thing's been growing for some time, and when I cut off my one little piece that I tried to remove, the entire darn thing fell down into the rockwork. So I had to jam it back up here, and as you can see, more of the little nano anemones need to go. And then hiding beneath these acros are some lobos, lobophilia. And I really do like lobos. They're a large polyp stony. I mean, literally the definition of an LPS, you can see each polyp. And I think they're beautiful. And I've got quite a few in here. You can see these up here up high. And then these are kind of hidden, but they're even prettier, especially under blue light. They have a lot of the orange popping and the green pops. It's just beautiful. And then there's some Montipora that has somehow snuck into the spot and is, I'm darkening it up to make it more visible, if that makes any kind of sense to you. This one here, I don't recall if it has different color polyps. Let me take a look. No, I think that one's just straight green. But I have some that are green with red polyps. I have some that are green with blue polyps. And then I like this thing to the left of it. I'm going to turn up the brightness a little bit here. So this is an orange metallic. What is that? Cyphastria? Maybe? I don't know. Somebody will correct me later. And then to the left of it is another type of Montipora, not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it's very pretty under blue light. And it's, yeah, I can't remember what kind of coral this is. That one I don't remember. And then there's some Monty down here that's not very happy. And behind it is some Hollywood Stunner chalice growing up the wall. And I love the moon coral, but as you can see, I'm going to turn down the brightness intentionally here for a second. I want to show you something. All right. So this coral, now that I've turned it down darker, you can see there's some orange centers, there's some green areas, there's the white area on the left that makes no sense at all. I mean, literally no sense. Nothing was there to touch it or brush it or irritate it. It just lost some color as if it was buried in sand, which it wasn't. I don't know what happened there. But this coral's been going through a couple of color changes, and typically if a coral starts changing color, it's on its way out. Now I'm not sure if this is going to be on its way out or if it's just changing colors because of the new change of lighting. That's a possibility. Not 100% sure. I got it as a very small piece, and it was growing for a long time inside the anemone cube. And it was actually a light blue color. This is more of a deeper color, more in the greens. It still has some really nice texture to it and some very nice coloration when you zoom in, like if you get close to the macro lens. And I like it a lot. It's called a moon coral. And then this right here, somebody's gonna say, well, what is that? I'm like, I don't know, it's a chalice. Had this one for a very long time. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to turn it up. And some people might say, oh, that's a jack-o'-lantern, or that's a, I don't know, a joker's eye or something. I don't know. I really don't know. It's just a chalice, and I like it. And I have that one. And then here I have this really cool Acan echinata, which has been with me for a very long time. And it's got about 4 different colors when you look at it. When you get really close up and you start looking and counting the colors, there's about 4 different ones in there. And it looks especially good late at night under the crazy blues. Then we'll see what else we got. Here is another chalice. Probably the same one you saw before. And it just grows. It just does a thing. It gets bigger. Back here is a big old piece of scrolling pavona that I'm saving for someone. And then this coral here, of course, I can't think of its name right this second. It's a really neat coral. It's ridiculously slow growing. It's on my creature ID page. I'm trying to think. Lithophyllon. And this one here has blue centers. Those mouths are bluish. And then the body is green. And it's just a really, really slow growing coral, but it's been growing for years. I mean, you're looking at something that's probably 10 inches, 11 inches across. And then down here, oh, there's my copper band hiding. Down here is another really nice chalice. I got this in trade from someone. They wanted a piece of Shadowcaster, and I said, well, I'll take a piece of that chalice. And I've been growing it ever since. Now, we're pretty far away, but you can see there's some pink in there, some orange, some reds. It's actually really, really nice. And it would be good to give that some proper placement because, I mean, look where it is in my reef. I'm going to back way up so you can see. It's just down there under everything. Oh, by the way, I wanted to show you guys my, my money barnacle. So I've just had this thing sitting on the bench for a while, and as you can see, it's growing money. And it just depends what size the polyp is what size the denomination of the cash is. It's pretty cool. And when I get enough money, I go buy new corals. Okay, I think that's everything I can show you on this side of the tank. And I don't really have the ability to take you to the back. I absolutely do not have the ability to take you to the back. I don't think I could even take you to the end of the tank, unfortunately. But I hope that you guys enjoyed today's tour. And maybe I can answer some of your questions. Oh, I left my circle on the whole time. I thought I turned it off. Let me scroll up and see what I missed. Like, the microphone doesn't work, or something like that, you know, as what happens so often here. I hope you guys like the 4K look of the tank, and you know, just it's in focus and it's live and all that. I mean, I'm really happy about that. I have been hating these webcams for so long, and when Michael came over and showed me his D500, I was so impressed by it. I was like, oh my god, I need that exact camera. And so I bought his used one because he wanted to upgrade anyway. And it is so nice, and I've been taking random shots each day, just something here, something there. I'll actually probably be super motivated to take a lot more pictures after the reef scape has been re-aquascaped again, because then I'll have probably a lot of little things, which is usually the most exciting, because the smaller the frags, the more colorful and vibrant they are, and you get to see them grow. Where something big, it just is slightly bigger. You don't always notice it. So let's see what happens here. Let me go to these comments and see what you guys wrote. I'll put you on this side. No, I'll put you on this side. I like you over here. Someone says, are you going to record the reset of the reef? That's a great, oops, this is really small. Move it right there. Actually, what I was thinking about doing, it's going to be in the middle of the week. It's not really, I don't know. I probably will film something or do some time lapse or something along those lines. It takes a long time to do what we're going to do, and for me to be worrying about cameras makes it impossible. It makes it 10 times longer when you're trying to set the frame, you know, set up the shot, and then you start doing something, and then your butt's in the way or what. You know, I mean, literally, it's just you got humans leaning into a tank and you just see butts. So that's kind of pointless. But I would like to be able to do something which would be kind of cool. And one of the thoughts that popped into my head, there's this thing on my YouTube channel that I've never turned on called membership. And memberships is something YouTube offered years ago, and I just never really saw the reason to turn it on. But I'm thinking I might just turn it on this weekend. And that way, if you are a member of the channel, maybe you can tune in to that live stream to watch us work on the tank, and the camera will just be off to the side. You know, you may hear some audio from the room. You may see something exciting happen. You may see nothing but boredom. I don't know. But I was thinking about turning it on and offering that as a perk for anyone signing up this weekend. And that way, you know, next week you can kind of see what's going on. We may work on it for several days. One of the things that I asked Duane to do was fly here and help me with my sheetrock work. And he said, okay, and he's actually really good at it. And I said, I'd rather pay you, my friend, than pay a stranger. And then probably not even be happy with the work anyway, where I've seen Duane's work. He does beautiful work. So if we can go in here and just kind of fix areas that are cracked, that have been repaired, and just get everything back to looking smooth and pretty so I can paint, that'll make me very, very happy to finally be able to look around in the house and not see all the flaws that I've been looking at for way too long. So he's going to be here. We'll do some of that, and then while that's drying, we can work on the tank. So I'm not even sure when those streams are going to happen exactly. It's not like they're scheduled to happen at 2, or will they be 30 minutes? Will they be 5 hours? I don't know the answers yet. I literally don't. But it's going to happen next week. He comes here on Monday, and he's here for like 5 days or so. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to show you something, and I thought offer to the members. And then, you know, whatever we end up having from real footage that I might have filmed or shot or taken pictures of, I can do something and we can talk about that on the next week's live stream and kind of catch up. So no one feels forced to do anything. One of the reasons, the other reasons why I've kind of considered possibly doing memberships is I've had people say, well, I just want to send you money for no reason. I mean, literally, they do. They say, I want to do something. I don't want to do super chats, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. So membership is a thing. I think it's, I don't even know what it is. I think it's $5 a month or something. And it's just a thing. It just supports the channel itself. And, you know, I don't know. I don't do OnlyFans or any of that kind of stuff. I don't do Patreon. I just sell things for my website. So I turn on memberships, and if you guys like it, use it. If you don't want to use it, it's fine. And I don't want you to feel left out. It's just, you have to offer something for memberships, or you can't do it, according to YouTube. And you can't do like a raffle. You can't say, well, if you join memberships, then one of you people can win a Vortex pump. It's like, you can't do that either. Whatever you offer has to go to everyone that's a member. So, so that should come out later today. I'll turn it on. You guys can choose to join. There may be only 5 of you. And 5 of you can watch what we're doing on the tank. I mean, it's fine, whatever. And it's not forever. I mean, if you say, hey, I don't want to pay for this anymore, you just turn it back off again. So you're not locked into anything. You're not giving up all your money all the time. So don't worry. Don't worry. We'll turn it on, see if you like it. And, you know, if you do, great. And if you don't, it's okay too. That's okay. All right. By the way, did you know that this week the live stream camera did not turn off after every 10 minutes? Near the end of the stream, my friend Ed sent me a link showing me exactly what to change on the menu of the camera. And so I did, and now the camera is just running continuous. And we have been going for 39 minutes straight. That would have been 4 times I had to reset the camera by now. So that's really nice. Oh my goodness. Amy says, I'm currently at the hospital, just had my baby boy, and I made it to the live stream. Aren't you busy recovering at this point? Come on. Congratulations on your newborn. That's awesome. And thanks for tuning into the live stream. I mean, talk about starting your kid off young. Let's see. Andrea says it's called Andrea's Pavona. Well, it will when there's one in your tank, Andrea. And that big chunk down there, that's yours. I've just been debating, do I ship it to you or do I hand it to Duane to bring back on a suitcase? Let's see. Some other things I didn't talk about in the reef behind me. I mean, like I said, I can't show you the back. There's quite a few corals in the back. I showed you guys a top-down view and lost my audio for 8 minutes a couple weeks ago because I didn't realize it turned off. I was describing those corals down there are in my coral graveyard, but they're not dead. They're completely alive. That's just the graveyard is where they go to grow, not to die. And some of those corals down on the sand that are growing over each other will be broken loose and lifted up and put on top of the reef where they belong. So that'll be some nice changes that you can look forward to. Also in the tank, you'll see there's, right there are 2 Anthias right now. Actually 3. All 3 Anthias are in the shot. There's 2 females and one that apparently is the slowest changing to male I've ever seen in my life. Males are normally purple while the Anthias are orange. These are Squampinis, and I've had them for a number of years, probably 5 years long. And I'd like to get more, but I'm not going to add any more fish to the system until these nitrates start to come down. Dobby asks, is the audio poor for anyone else? So now that I've been talking for 41 minutes, it'd be nice to know if the audio is poor. And guys, also keep in mind that when I'm looking at your comments, I'm always 20 minutes behind you because I was busy chatting about something. And so I hope you just stay online long enough to see me respond to your comment, because I am reading all the comments and looking for things to bring into the stream. Mike says, Consuelos, the Cleaner Wrasse, looks like he's doing good. Yeah, very active, always on the move, always doing what he can to keep everyone nice and clean. And the fish completely tolerate the Cleaner Wrasse, which is really amazing. Oh, I didn't show you another coral. I got to show you another coral. So this one, let me go over here. I'm going to show you this one because it's got a story too. Somebody said, we want to know the stories behind your tank. So over here, let's see if I can move this tripod a little bit closer. And I want to adjust my right balance again. This way. Okay, so things like that. Zoom in. And focus. And ignore that pesky anemone. Oh, this way. So this is a yellow scroll coral. And when I got my first piece of it many years ago, it was like a dish to hold some mints in, like a few mints to put on the table for, after dinner. And I had it, and it was really pretty, and I got it for 20 bucks, which was a great deal. And I put that in my tank, and it was down, actually, it was right down there on the sand in that spot down there. And then it grew and got larger, and this is, I've had this thing for a super, super long time. The 400-gallon that I'd set up in 2011 sprung a leak in 2012, 13 months later, and this coral almost completely died. I was down to what I call DNA. And hey, you can look at the little scratches in my glass. All right. So this coral here was just a little tiny bit of tissue. And other than that, it was gone. And I mean, literally, there was like a speck and a speck and a speck. And I moved it into a temporary tank with the corals that had survived the leak. And I just waited for it to heal. Because if there's any life at all, I can get a coral back. And then after watching cyano try to grow in it, I watched Mahanos try to get in it, I watched Aptasia get on it, I saw bubble algae get on it. All that stuff happened to it, and I kept trying to clean the dead skeleton so that the tissue could continue to grow, and the tissue did get bigger and bigger, and it started to fill in, and it completely filled all of it. It grew over its dead skeleton to be a beautiful coral again. And then it got much, much bigger. And as you can see, there's like 2 circles here in this moment. And this was actually probably double the size of what it is now. But because of the corals that are above it, it's in so much shade, it's not getting near enough light. Way down here on the sand, you can see there's some life happening down there. which is a perfectly good, healthy fraglet that could turn into something beautiful one day. And all these polyps that come out, they're like individual little tiny yellow flowers. This is going to be impossible to get with this lens, but I'm going to try to keep my hands off the camera. And that is the best I can do for you. So there are little polyps extended off the rim, and even the ones inside the body, they open up and they look like little stars. They're really pretty. They look especially good late at night after the light's out with a flashlight. You just go look at your tank. So if you don't have a yellow scroll, you should definitely get this coral. Now this one I said I got from a hobbyist in the local club, but there's another huge amount of it in the 20,000 gallon reef on Long Island, and it is huge. It's like 3 feet by 4 feet across, and it grows super tall, and then Joe will cut all the top off, destroy everything underneath to lower it back down a foot to grow up again. It's an amazing coral, and it's definitely one that's worth having. And if you like some yellow in your tank, this is one that I would highly recommend. Oh, and there's another one hiding in there. This one's Duane's fault. This is totally Duane's fault. Let me lock the camera in place and see if I can make it brighter. I always turn the knob the wrong direction. Nope, this isn't the right direction. It's just I'm zoomed in so far. This one is a Dendrophilia, and there's probably only 2 heads. Now dendros actually like the light compared to sun corals that don't want light at all. And these 2 guys were, this one frag, Duane planted it here in total shade, and it is still alive 4 years later from where he put it. I mean, literally, he did this 4 years ago in October. And they're there, and they open up, and they do their thing, and they're catching whatever particulates they can. I can't even feed them if I wanted to, because I can't get to them where they're at. They will get relocated while Duane is here. So that is something else that I want to share with you. And then right here, I didn't talk about this coral either. I glossed right over it because it looks so boring. But actually, this is a really nice coral. This is a Montipora. And if I can get it to focus, and if I can darken this a little bit, we'll see if I can get the darker. So if you darken it, you can see better. I mean, with the human eye, you just see it. But if you'll look, that's a sunset Montipora. And it's an orange body with green polyps. And the closer you get, the better it looks. I have a whole bunch of it here, and only the part that's getting full light looks pretty. All the rest is kind of meh. And then to its left is some kind of Montipora as well. Probably something like Strawberry Fields or something because of the little reddish orange polyps that are in there inside that green base. And there's a white spot back there that's actually not dead. I thought it was another thing happening in my tank, but then I realized I broke a little piece off to give to someone, and that was the spot that was under the piece I broke off. So that white is not death. It was shaded and completely normal when you trim a Montipora coral. So okay, I think that's all I want to talk about right now. I'll line this up again. Let me back the camera up a little bit so you can see the whole reef, because it is a nice reef, and this is your last chance to see it the way it looks now. I'll take 1 or 2 pictures for posterity, but this whole reef is going to look completely different a week from now. Okay. All right, let's go to the next. Adam says, long live Spock. Nassau tangs, apparently, from what I've read, live up to 35 years. So I've had her since 2004. So she's probably got like another 15 years ahead of her, as long as I do nothing wrong. Anton says, what if corals could grow out of the water and just spray them with salt water to keep them alive? I've had some corals that would grow to the surface, and then when I would turn off the return pump to feed the reef, the water would drop like an inch and all the tips were exposed, but they'd be wet, and the coral would slime a little bit. And then, 10 minutes later, the pump's refilled, and it was up to the top again. What ends up happening, the corals don't just grow up. They don't just keep going up like stalactites. Instead, is it stalactites or stalagmites, the ones that go up? Maybe stalagmites. And what happens is they go up to the surface, and then they literally puddle outward. They just go outwards like an umbrella of tissue, The top is hideous. Lots of life and prettiness, but then algae gets in there and flow can't get through there, and it's actually kind of ugly. I had a coral that did that exact thing in my 280-gallon tank, and it was really cool looking, and I was taking all these pictures. I was like, it's this far from the surface, and then finally it burst the surface, and you can see like the tips sticking out of the water, and the water was over it. It was neat looking, but then it kept growing, and then it started doing what I was talking about. It kind of umbrellaed itself, and algae got in there, and it really was impossible to keep clean and tidy. And it wasn't long after we got to that point where the tank leaked, and I had to pull it out. Now the funny thing about that coral is it was growing on the overflow box. So it was an L-shaped coral that had, you know, it started with a magnet with a frag on it, and the frag grew into a whole beautiful colony, light blue, really, really pretty. And then when I had to remove it, I thought, well, how am I going to get off the overflow box, you know, in any decent condition? The whole thing came off in an L shape in one piece, just like boop, and you could see the magnet in the bottom where it all started. And I had this L shape that I put in my temporary frag tank to keep the corals alive. It didn't make it, of course, but I tried. But it was so neat, and I totally didn't expect that. And I remember when those tips were getting so clogged up before the tank had leaked, I was actually trimming the tops with bone cutters just to give the coral a chance to continue living, because once it starts doing that mushrooming I'm describing, or putting the tissue out in a disc, it actually shades itself and robs itself of getting any light, so it doesn't work. Nick says, I wish the Tracy Morgan Gorgonian was readily available. It's my favorite coral. Well, when I was shipping out, and I'm still going to this week ship out a few more orders, I'm a little nervous because it's crazy hot, but we'll see. I'm going to get myself some ice packs and do overnight shipping, and hopefully FedEx will do their jobs properly this time for the ones that didn't work out last shipment. Some people got Tracy Morgan Gorgonian, some people got Montipora, some people got Pavona, some people got the Anacropora. I mean, some people got a few acro bits. You know, there was all kinds of things. So I tried to just do a mystery frag. I didn't want to commit to anything. I didn't want to make absolute promises. Some people got Fungia corals, which are really nice, and I've been growing from scratch. I didn't show you one Fungia. Okay, I got to show you one more coral. So down here in the cave, down low, behind that Anthias, give me a second to get everything lined up perfectly. And I'm super far away again. We'll focus. That is a Fungia coral. Let me see if I can brighten it up. So that is a Fungia that grew in my tank from a tiny baby. And if I show you this little area right here, let me zoom in. That right there is where the babies come from. If you ever wonder where baby corals come from, this is the spot. So these guys here, the parent colony that died, spud out these, or buds out these little babies that turn into a decent size, a quarter, a $50. What else are they the size of? I mean, they get big. They get like as big around as like the lid of a jar, and you know, like a spaghetti jar or a jelly jar. And these things, I grow 50 or 60 of them a year, it seems like. And I don't do anything specific for them. They get to a certain size, and then they blow off the original skeleton and land on the sand, and then I usually move them toward the back. So these are Fungia corals, super easy. I like them down on the sand. I see no problem with that, and they will, if they touch something like that chalice right there, for example, probably has a burn mark. The Fungia does win. So you might want to keep that in mind if you have any of my Fungias, or if you ever get one of mine. Is there anything else I forgot to tell you about in here? I'll leave it on there for a little bit so you guys can enjoy the clowns. Send in the clowns. Okay, leave that right there. I know you guys like the skunks. And I'll move my circle. All right, 54 minutes in. I think that went pretty well, that I used a live camera, moved it around the tank. What did you guys think of that? Was that a... Did it make you seasick? I mean, was it a problem? Was it worth watching? Would you prefer to just listen to this show and not seen it? I mean, what's on your mind? I'd love to know. Anton says, what's the difference between a Nacropora and a Montipora setosa? Well, Montipora setosa is a encrusting Montipora, and a Nacropora is it's in the Acrowish family. I mean, it almost makes you think of Montipora digitata, but as far as I know, it's not. And I've had two different kinds of a Nacropora. This one here is a little, and it's in the bottom of the frame actually. Is more thicker and kind of more durable seeming. I mean, they still can break. But I had a different one that was really, really wiry and super thin, and it was tan, and I just had a piece, and I gave some to my tank sitter, and in his tank, it grew into this giant thing where mine did not do well at all. Things kept happening to it, and it got smaller and smaller, and I said, well, someday I'll need a piece back from you, and which of course he said, yeah, no problem. But the two different kinds, they're pretty neat. I feel, oh, you know what, that Acropora there, that also came from Dave bought one in California. And I think it had some weird name like Slime Ball or something along those lines. Sorry about messing up the audio for you guys. It's funny too because it's like clipped to my shirt and I'm not touching it whatsoever. I'm just moving behind the camera and I'm literally keeping my hands off of it, but I guess it messes up sometimes. Oh, Freshwater Coral says the orange blob on the top is a encrusting Pavona. No, it's a Montipora. But I'll look it up and double check. And yes, there is one Mahano in the stand. There's probably a few. The copper band doesn't like to eat all the Mahanos, which is annoying. But apparently she does enough damage to them that they shrink down really tight versus being a big fluffy thing. But I do want, while we're working in the tank, I just want to declutter and I want to remove as much of anything that is seemingly a pest to kind of make things be okay. Jared says, how do you like the Neptune sky in terms of photography and white balancing? I love it. I am just blown away. And the new camera has a really nice ability to handle the different spectrums I have. I have some profiles set up to pick a certain type of, I set it to a certain look, and then I can start shooting. And I can just adjust the camera slightly, and I can just shoot. And then I put it in Lightroom, and I clean it up a little bit if needed. But I learned something that Michael's been doing that I didn't realize. It's a real photography hack. I love it. So he had an orange filter that screws on the front of his 40mm lens, and he uses the Kelvin white balance on the camera itself, and he adjusts between 5,000 Kelvin and 10,000 Kelvin, even with the orange, and the pictures look almost true to life on the back of the camera before you've even offloaded them to correct them. Where on my old Nikon, I would take the picture, it was very blue, I'd take it in my computer and I would drag the slider all the way down to 10K, or actually I'd drag it up to 10K, and it would make the reef look normal and natural and pretty. But I never could look at the pictures and appreciate them on the back of the camera, where I can with a new Nikon. It absolutely is vastly different. And now I want to order more of those orange filters for all the different lens sizes I have, because it's such a nice way to skip a step in the post-processing and just kind of catch it in the first place. And I'm like, wow, I wish I'd known this trade secret a long time ago. The funny thing about Mike, and when he was on the live stream, he was answering some questions. One of the things I noticed with him is even as I asked him questions about the camera he's owned for years, he kept saying, well, I need to hold it. I need to put my hands on it and figure out where the buttons are to know what I would normally do. And so he would make an adjustment and say, okay, there you go. And I'm like, well, what did you do? And then he would explain, but of course I didn't remember it because it was so fast. But if I said, hey, how do you adjust like continuous focus? He's like, hang on, let me hold the camera in my hand. And then he would find the buttons because his fingers just knew where everything was by heart. But no, every single day I'm looking at the tank because I'm here in the living room and I'm looking at the way the reef looks under these skies. And I'm just like, man, it really looks good. I'm so pleased with how nice it's been looking. And I'm just kind of like, okay, maybe I waited too long with those metal halides. But I mean, these just came to market, so my timing was good. But no, I'm very happy with the look, with the final, what they came out with. You know, the produced product is really good, and I have had no weird surprises or unpleasantness. And they just go through their cycle every single day. And then, like when I do the live stream, I actually turn on a profile called streaming. And then it sets up all the lighting just the way it is right now so that the camera can get what it needs to get. And you can see in the background here from this webcam, it's still pretty decent, even though this webcam hates, you know, the distance. It can't focus. It's too far away. But overall, it looks pretty decent. All right. Brian, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. He says, thanks so much for the free content, wisdom, and knowledge every Saturday. Keep staying strong. We love you, man. Aw, thank you. Adam says, I've typically had color changes caused by lighting changes or amino acid changes. Certain colors of zooanthele require different amino acids. That's just my take, so who knows? No, you're right. And if things are stable and continuous, things stay the same. I remember years ago when I overdosed Prodibio, which they said you could not do. And it was actually a combination of things that caused it. I literally had everything that was green in my tank turn brown. It was the weirdest thing. And I had a couple other corals do some really weird stuff. And I just had to wait 12 weeks for everything to get back to normal. And it did. Everything went back to where its normal colors were. This reef tank for the last 6 months has not looked like the right color to me. It's not as vivid as it's been in the past. And I just have to assume and attribute it basically to the nitrate problem that's been going on and nothing else, because nothing else has consistently changed on the tank. Now, I did switch out lights, whatever it was, 6-8 weeks ago. And so that is going to be a big change. And I saw some brown acros start to have some nice light color purple tips. So who knows what the LEDs will do to excite the zooanthele to give us some nicer colors. But there's certain corals that just, they are not rich and colorful enough like they used to be. And so I'm thinking the big changeover and attacking the tank and cleaning the sand bed and all the things we're going to do should make a difference going forward for the rest of the year. But it definitely will make the 8-year anniversary of the reef really weird because it won't look anything like it has in previous years. Elmer says, I love the 4K view and your tour through the reef. I'm glad. Hello, Insane Reefer. I'm sorry the mic was acting up. I apologize. I sometimes feel like if I use the room microphone, you're going to get the bubbling of the tank and stuff, so I try to wear a mic to hopefully get you good quality. But I don't know what it's doing or why it's messing up, because I'm not like pulling on the wires or anything. All I do is like check to make sure it still has power. Let me scroll down. It should be fine. I see, you know, I keep looking to see what, you know what, let me see. Nope, that part's right too. Later on, I watch these live streams to see how they sound so I can hear for myself. I don't know why the audio messes up on us at times though. Okay. Now I don't want to talk because you said the audio is bad. Paul says, any update on the nitrate R? No, not yet. It's too soon. It's going to be a while. Amy, thank you so much for the super chat. She says, this is from my newborn, thanking you in advance for all he's about to learn. Wow, talk about setting the bar really high. Okay, I'll do my best. Lucas says, I bought my first skimmer after 3.5 years a few days ago, and I'm just looking at the bubbles like a little kid. That's awesome. Adam says, in the past you mentioned you were out of stock for the Ecotech Versa pumps, so you raised the price so no one would buy it. The Versa stock is back. Talk to your Ecotech rep for the store. Actually, I did place an order for some pumps, and they are on the way as we speak, and 3 of them are already sold before I've even put them on the website. So the price will be restored on the website when they're here. But for now, yes, they are still listed as $1,500, so no one would actually add one to their cart. But I think that you know, they'll be gone quickly. But it's, you know, I know Ecotech is going to work on upping their inventory now that they're completely moved to their new location, and we should be able to start getting those pumps in stock to sell. Dean says, do you have any idea why I can't keep Milka Coral but I can get acros to grow like mad? Can you get any other Stylophoras to grow besides the Milka? Because there's different types. And you may have a fish that's actually nipping at the Milka when it doesn't care about any of the other corals. For example, a Flame Angel or Coral Beauty or a Potter's Angel or one of those may be nipping on that coral. Or it could be even something else doing it. But when I find that I have a coral that doesn't work, I will try it once or twice and I just kind of give up. And then I try again like a year from now and see if things have changed in the tank for some reason to where that coral works. For example, how long have I told you guys that I could not keep a blue tort alive? And I had blue tort in the front and the back of my reef for about 4 or 5 years. So there is the, eventually things work, but there are times where right then and now you can't make it happen no matter how much you want it to. Elia is saying that things are going wrong in their tank as far as I can tell. Their corals are dying, their fish are dying, they're sick. It says, could you please look into it? What are we talking? Are you talking about my tank, everything's dying? Because it's not. It's just my tank has been around for 7.5 years. It's not picture perfect. But if you're talking about your own tank, I hope that you're doing water tests and trying to find out. I can't tell if you're telling me I'm doing something wrong or if you are saying that there's problems with your own tank because you're asking me to look into it. So I don't know. I'm looking for the next question. Joseph says, I'm new to the saltwater tank keeping. I was given a frag of a coral. I was told it was zinnia, but it doesn't pulse. It looks like something else altogether. What can it be? It could be Anthelia. Anthelia doesn't pulse, and it's very fast growing. It's pretty aggressive, and I don't recommend it for anyone. So I would look up Anthelia in Google and compare the pictures to your own thing in your tank and see if they're the same thing. Pulsing zinnia is beautiful, and it's a really nice tank barometer. And if things are not going well, you can just look at that coral, and if it's not happy, you know something's wrong with your water parameters, and you can make corrections. Regis says, how accurate is the apex for monitoring pH and salinity? How often should they be calibrated? You should calibrate your pH probe probably once or twice a year. And then the salinity probe has been an ongoing battle for a long time, but VCA, Vivid Creative Aquatics, just came out with a little 3D printed device and a tiny small pump. It's a kit called SPS, and you will hook that up in your system to put the salinity probe in and pump water across it, and it makes your salinity stay really stable in the graph to where you can totally trust it. And some people are able to just set up their salinity probe in a way where it cooperates all the time, and then others are battling it all the time, and there's like, oh, it's never right. So this kit, this add-on, should correct it to where you can trust it more. That being said, I still think it's important to actually test your salinity once a week with a refractometer to verify where your numbers are and to make sure that what you're reading on the apex is telling you the truth. Flooded Aquatics says, how long would you wait on a new 100-gallon tank before adding anemones? I like to recommend that someone wait 9 months before adding anemones to a tank. For one, you want to put all your corals where they're going to go, and then when you add your anemone, it's going to go wherever it wants to go, and it could actually affect things. Where if you put it in first and it just keeps moving all the time, you can never plant any corals because you're always worried. Plus, I like to see the tank get more mature before you actually put the anemone in, because after 9 months of taking care of the tank, it will be super stable hopefully at that point, because you've gone through all the nuances, you've gone through all the ugly phase, you've gone through all the issues, you've made the mistakes and corrected them, and now when you put this thing in, it's going to live a long time. Because anemones that come out of the ocean, they live like 100 years. That's what I've been told. And so for you to put something in your tank and it only live for 3 months or 6 months or less than a year and die, it's a real shame. So we want to make sure that the tank is actually really, really, really stable and able to handle it, and that's why I recommend that. I still see a lot of people sending me messages about this microphone. And I just don't know if there's a problem or not. I wish I could find out. Wish there was an easier way. One second. All right, so I've had a couple of people tell me the audio is actually back to normal. I apologize that I don't know it's bad when it happens. That's the problem with live streaming. You just never know. When I'm editing a video and I'm working on it and I'm listening to it 1,000 times to get it just right, I know you have audio for the whole thing. So I apologize for the bad quality, and I will continually work on improving it. Drives me crazy that I mess up for you guys. I'm going to change the camera angle again. Okay. Osman says, what kind of anemones are in the foreground? Is it the same as the lighter ones behind them? The big one in the back, this one here, is the Sea Bay. And then all these little guys here are the nano anemones. They're small little green bubble tip anemones that are long tentacles in my tank. And I have 100 of them. Anton asks a question of what's the difference between zoanthelle and Symbodinium. I thought Symbodinium, or some version of that word, is an actual very soft coral that some people thought was a cool thing to buy, but it's kind of semi-aggressive. And it grew like over frag racks and just covered the egg crate and everything. And it was really pretty looking, but it was too much of a good thing. But might be mixing that up with something that you're asking me instead. Paul says, do you have any tips for shooting photos and video with a DSLR camera? I just bought one. Yeah, actually on my website, you can go there and go to the photography section in the articles, and you can look at one article after another where I talk about using a DSLR for for photography, for macro lenses, for what do you call them? Extension tubes, and I go into all of that. And then on this channel, there's a few videos I've talked about photography, as well as a couple of videos showing how to edit in Photoshop and how to edit in Lightroom. Just my work process. It's not like the all-encompassing, this is everything you can do in Lightroom. It's just a little bit of what I do in Lightroom, and I shared it with the world in case it helps you guys a little bit as well. Emmanuel says, maybe your refugium can't support your nitrate levels. Do you have Calibrated, and is that a jumbo algae scrubber? What is your phosphate level at? The phosphate goes up and down. It tends to be somewhere between 0.1 and 0.75. There's a whole bunch of feather Calibrated in the refugium. And there is a turf scrubber that I just cleaned out recently, so it's kind of barren right now. It's got to restart again. But I've not been pulling out enough algae, and I need to do more about that. This is all part of what I'm going to be working on next week. As I clean and change and improve things, it's going to happen that way. You know what's funny? This is just a coincidence. Making sure my mic is not on me. It's just a coincidence, but my ear yesterday was doing some strange thing, like I could hear my heartbeat almost. And now something's literally happening in this ear, and you guys are all saying I sound like I'm talking underwater. I started to hear like I'm talking underwater. And that's not good. So I must be getting some kind of a sinus cold of some kind. Terry says, do you still have the mini carpet anemones, the ones that were green and about the size of a quarter? I know you used to have some. No, I don't. And I gave away so many to people so that they would go out into the world and everyone would have them. They were mini carpet anemones. They were amazing. And I mean, they'd be about the size of a dime. They weren't even a quarter. They were little tiny things. And I love them to death. And I was really hoping to get one back one day. But I don't know anyone who has one, or if they're still in the hobby. I have no idea. They were really neat, super sticky, very colorful, and I miss them. Thanks for bringing it up, though, because I'd forgotten about them. Dean says, have you ever thought about completely emptying your tank and starting again? I've thought about it myself, and as things grow in and fills the open, and to let it fill in the open spaces. No, that's not a desire of mine. I do not want to do that. But when we do what we're going to do, we're going to take out a lot of big stuff and we're going to put in things that are much smaller, like the size of a fist, and just have all these little mini colonies that will then turn into something big again in about 9 months. Karate Chick says, on the subject of anemones, will clowns switch to an anemone if they're hosting or living inside something else beforehand? So the host is the anemone. The clownfish will choose where they want to live, and sometimes they are like hugging a powerhead, or they're living inside a clam, like a big one, or they are inside green star polyps, or they're inside a hammer coral, or a torch, or Gonipora, and then maybe in a bubble tip. Or maybe they'll go to a Sea Bay. I mean, yeah, they can switch around and they can go to whatever they like to call home. Thomas says, will a Lawnmower Blenny help with green hair algae? It can a little bit, but it's not guaranteed to get it all. Thank you, Hacker Pro. Said not from this channel, but stopped by to say beautiful setup. Thank you very much. Pam says, what kind of purple stick is that in the middle of the back of your tank? The middle of the back. I don't know, Pam. Regis says, do you sell the VCA Salinity probe adapter for the Apex? I didn't order it yet, but I will. They weren't actually available yet. It was like pre-orders for vendors, and I hadn't quite contacted him yet to place an order. The next question. Ant Toxic says, 2 hang-on back auto aqua and a marine deep gravel bed, 90 gallons salt, lots of live rock, does great. Do you agree salt tanks can be simple LEDs for lights? No. No, I don't agree with that. Matter of fact, I kind of ranted about that a couple weeks ago on this channel, saying I do not feel that saltwater tanks are easy or that people should be told they're easy. There's actually so much to know and to learn, and it's actually hard. And if you do everything right, things can still go wrong. Can you do it inexpensively? Yes. Will it last long term? I don't know. But the thing is that there are a lot of things that we learn as we get into this hobby. First off, you think, I'm buying an aquarium, I'm getting some fish. And then you hear about corals, and you're like, well, let me get something easy. And you pick something easy, like mushrooms. And you're like, oh, I'm so happy, I love them. And then one day you're like, well, what is that? And you see someone's really pretty tank, and they're like, oh, that's a SPS coral. And you're like, what's SPS? And then they tell you, and you're like, well, I want that. And then they say, what lights do you have? And then you say, well, I got these LED lights. I got them at Petco. And they're like, oh, what exactly? What kind? And then the conversation turns into a lot of knowledge, right? We have to really focus on really good water quality. We have to focus on really good water in the first place, which would be RODI water and not using tap or using well water or whatever. I mean, we actually are trying to make sure everything is perfect going into the tank. And then we have to maintain it so it's stable. Day after day after day after week after week after month after year. I mean, some of the corals in my tank I've had since 2002. That's a long time to keep something alive when you have power outages, when you have tank leaks, when you have overdoses, when you have underdoses, when you change the salt mix to a different brand, when you change your lighting to something different, when the bulb cracks and floods the tank with UV light. I mean, there's so many things that can happen that can mess it up. Not to mention, you could just be painting the room and the fumes start killing your tank. Or it could be something else, like you have a child or a pet that drops its toy inside your sump and it's releasing something into the water. Or the heater cracks and splits open and the copper and the wiring gets exposed. Or stray electricity. I mean, oh my goodness, I could just go on and on with all the things that can go wrong. And it's not me being a doomsday. I'm telling you, I tell you all these things so that they don't happen to you. That's why we have this channel in the first place, to help you say, okay, how can I avoid that? For example, from today's lesson, I can tell you, don't let those little anemones get into your main reef. And if you see one, take it out immediately and don't be nice and leave it there, because now I have to take out 50. And if you see a Mahano in there, you get rid of the one before you have 500. These are just different things that we do to keep our tanks happy. And it's an ongoing thing, and no, I don't think it's easy at all, and I really wish people quit trying to say it is, because unfortunately the other people believe it's easy. Like, it's as easy as using crayons, right? Okay, that sounds easy. Have you ever tried coloring with crayons now that you're an adult? How easy was it? Did it look spectacular, or did it look like you were working with crayons? I mean, everything takes skill, everything takes knowledge, and everything takes time. So we have to work on ourselves and work on our tanks and do the best we can for it. Chris says, what do you use for flow in your tank? The tank itself has 2 MP60s, which are on that end. And then there's, right behind my hand here, is an MP40 that is blowing from the back of the tank forward. And then these 2 returns are called random flow accelerators, and they're pushing the water across the tank. And they don't just push water out at a high intensity, but they, because of the way it's designed, it actually shoots the water at different points randomly. That's why they're called random flow generators. And so it's not just like a garden hose or a fire hose. It's actually moving water here and 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 here. And it's constantly doing this all the time. And between all of those things happening, that's the flow in my tank. Pam, the coral that's right above the Sea Bay Anemone is the shadowcaster Acropora. And that is the one that was really, really big, and we cut it way down. And Duane wanted to get rid of most of it, and I wouldn't let him. And now it's grown really big again. And I don't really think I've lost much of it in the last 4 years. It's just, it didn't really like take off, but I mean, from the front to the back, that coral is about 20 to 24 inches wide. And it's about 11 or 12 inches tall, and it's probably about 2 feet, about 20 inches side to side. Jason says, any idea after 2 years of having my tank, all my Montipora are dying, branching, plating, and crusting? Maybe a Montipora eating nudibranchs in your tank. Have you looked for that? The other thing could just be something, I mean, you said all the Monty, it's a very specific thing. But if they're already fading in the first place, I would almost wonder if your magnesium isn't where it needs to be, because Montipora love magnesium. And then finally, you might need to actually do an ICP test and see if anything is in your tank that's being toxic, including magnets that are split open and rusting into the water. And we have so many magnets on our tanks. We use magnets to hold things in place. We have magnets inside the motors to make them spin. It's really important to take everything apart and look at it from time to time. Take out the impeller of your return pump, take out the impeller of your skimmer pump, look inside the cleaning magnet, look inside your feeding clip magnet, look inside your frag rack magnet. You might have magnets used to hold corals in place. Look at those magnets. I mean, check everything for any kind of bad magnet. I would do that next. And hopefully you can determine what's going on. I had someone here in the local area who had a lot of Montipora, and he had these Montipora eating nudibranchs, and they were destroying everything. And he tried everything he could to get rid of them, and finally he just took all the Montipora out of his tank. And I think like a year or 2 later, he put Montipora in, never had a problem again, and now he has a ton of Monty again. So he just had to starve out the pest that was in there destroying those corals. Guided by Echoes says, have you ever witnessed an azure damsel cleaning another fish? I've had one that either does that or is bullying a coral beauty 3 times its size. No, I haven't seen that. I do know that the azure damsel could possibly eat some flatworms in a tank, but damselfish by nature are kind of aggressive and they can be bullies. So typically most of us don't want damsels in our tanks. There was a guy down in, I think he was in Houston, and he made this beautiful SPS reef, and he had a ton of sand. So it was like a giant tank, and then he had his SPS reef in one end of the tank, and they had all this open sand and maybe a clam or something. And he put in like 50 blue damsels, and it was so cool looking. And everyone's like, why would you get damsels? But they all stayed together and kept swimming, and it added all that blue, and it was actually really pretty. Crazy, no one does this, and I think that's what made it stand out so strongly, but it was really neat. And then Perplexed says, are you wearing Jessica and Steven's shirt? Yes, I am. This is a Maui diving shirt. Andrea told me last week, wear a blue shirt on the live stream. So I grabbed the first one I found in my pile. Glenn says, I see on Facebook more aquatic exhibitions are being available in the US this year. Will the big shows be running again? Or are you going to be attending? So Aquashella just happened. Reefapalooza New York, I think, is in a week. Reefapalooza Florida already happened. MACNA will not happen this year, except for virtually, but it will take place next year, like next September in 2022. And so, yes, these shows are starting to come back. People, I guess everyone's getting vaccinated, and so they're all willing to go out and go to to the trade shows again, which is nice. Now you ask me, am I going to go? I have not committed to any shows this year at all. I am being a homebody. You guys know I'm dealing with grieving, and it's an ongoing thing. It's going to take some time for me, and to leave the house is not really on my list of things to do. I just don't have the desire to go to trade shows and stand around for 2 or 3 days and look at tanks and talk to people, which I know is weird because I talk to you on the live stream, but I'm comfortable with this, but I'm not really comfortable going out into the world and leaving my tank behind and leaving Jack behind and just going off for days at a time. That's my emotions are not there. So I'm just not able to do it at this time, and it'll be later on when I feel more comfortable and feel more myself. I started doing grief therapy probably 6 weeks ago, I think, and after Mother's Day, whenever that was. And one thing that was said to me this week that kind of made sense was they said, you trying to get back to normal is harder for you because you've never had to do it under these circumstances before. And that made sense. I've had all kinds of things happen in my life that were difficult, and I would find a way to just kind of keep moving forward. But the death of Caitlin was completely different, and it just stopped me in my tracks. It was just unbelievable and extremely painful. It's still painful. I don't know when it'll not be painful, to be honest. But why do I go into these conversations? They're so difficult. The loss of not having her here, the loss of not being able to just call her on the phone and talk to her like I did all the time before she ever moved in, the fact that I'll never see her again, all that just is unbelievable. It just makes me sad inside right now. And to go to trade shows without her, when that was exactly what I was planning to do, was go with her to these places and to many other places. We had plans, and all those are shattered. They're gone. And so I'm not in a position to go to those shows, even though I'm sure I'd probably find some joy. I mean, even on these live streams, I'm laughing and I'm smiling, and it's not an act. It's me wanting to be happy, but internally, it's really hard to be happy. It's really hard to be positive. It's really hard to be focused and to be accomplished. It's really, really difficult. And I've never had to deal with this before in my life. So I do like that I get to talk with you guys, and I appreciate that you're willing to listen, because so many people are like, oh, I don't want to hear it. And but many of you have said, I'm here if you need to talk. And you've said on the stream, we're here, and I appreciate those thoughts. It doesn't fill the void, but it definitely is nice to know that you're out there. And I do appreciate that, and I'm doing the best I can. I talked to a customer 2 days ago about his order. I had to get some dimensions. I called him up. Turns out he's a grief counselor, or he's a counselor, or whatever. I think he's both. And he was talking to me about what I've been doing, and he just said, "Yeah, what you went through is unbelievable." He's like, "That's one of the hardest things ever," and he's like, "The fact that you're still talking in open conversation with just a stranger is a really good sign." I was like, okay, that's good. But it's I think about her all the time. And this week, take a quick break from the stream here. This week, after my therapy, I just was a mess. And I posted something about Caitlin on Facebook. And it was a nice memory, but I really miss her. And I just knew I couldn't get any work done that day. And I put the post out there, and I had a friend call me up who's currently in Cancun. And he said, Mark, I'm buying you a flight. I'm looking up flights. We're going to have you here tomorrow. You're going to be with us. I'm like, no, do not buy me a trip to Cancun. I'm not going to the airport. I'm not going to be there. And he's like, I'm doing it. And I said, you want to look something up? You can. Do not use your credit card. Do not spend any money, because I will not be at the airport. And he was like, okay, but I just hate that you're so sad. I'm like, I know. I don't like being sad either, but no, I'm not leaving town. And then that evening, Paula wrote me when I reached out to her about something, and she said, why don't you join us on our boat tomorrow? And I thought, ooh, I love the idea of that. Now that I can take a day off and kind of get myself centered again, right? And so I drove an hour to join them on their boat. I got to bring Jack along for the trip, and she came on the boat. This is her first time on a boat, and I think the boat was like 32 feet. It was a pontoon boat, and we went on Lake Ray Hubbard for a bunch of hours, and I kept putting sunscreen, and we kept worrying about Jack. And Paula was so nice. Now, Paula works at the Dallas World Aquarium, so she's in charge of all the animal husbandry. So she's very in tune with animals. And she's a grandmother, so she loves children. And she looks at Jack, and she's like, what does Jack need? And she was watching Jack like a hawk the whole time, even though Jack was a guest on the boat. And, you know, you'd think it's a dog. If the dog's not happy, we'll find out. But no, she looked how she was breathing, how she was sitting, how she was, you know, anything. And she brought her a dog bed to be on. Bought her a water bowl. I brought a bowl. She bought a better one. And I brought water, and she had better water. And she got her a little life vest so we could put her into the lake and she could swim. And she got her a toy that if it fell into the water would probably float, but we didn't test that theory. I don't know. And there was other things she did too. It was crazy. And I brought all the stuff for Jack like a parent does. You bring in all the things for your kid. And Jack ended up having a really nice time. I mean, she'd never done it before, and she did really well. You know, when we first put her in the water, she did not like it. And I watched her, her lower lip was like trembling. And I was like, okay, and I put her back on the boat. And this was not like a thing she could walk off and just get into the water. You had to actually go down a ladder. So I held her by the life vest harness. It had a handle on the top, and I could just lift up the dog and put her down into the water, and I could lift her up and lift her back onto the boat. And then while we were all in the water, she started whining like, I want to be with you guys. So we brought her back into the water again and gave her a flotation raft to be on top of so she wouldn't have to paddle the whole time. And she actually got comfortable in there after 2 times. And then she put her head on the pillow and just looked at, you know, the dragonflies, and it was just so nice. And she did so good. And Paula says, well, now she's a boat dog. She didn't get sick. I mean, she had a great time. She got out of the house for once, and not just on a walk around the block, but like to go see something. And it was really nice. And I wish Caitlin had been there to see Jack experience this, because I think she would have loved it too. So anyway, that's kind of a Caitlin story today, I guess, sort of. I try to do one each week. Regis says, how do you frag the Gorgonian you have? Can you cut any point, or do you frag from the base? I have one growing very fast. I typically cut off near the top, like the top 2 or 3 inches. I will cut one off, and it will just heal, and it will grow again. I don't really want to cut the base. When I first secured it in my tank, I put it onto a rock with, I think, a zip tie to hold it there until it grew onto the rock. And then after, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks or 2 months, I cut the zip tie and the coral stayed. And now if I have to move the Gorgonian, which maybe we'll move it this week, I don't know, I can just move the rock and the Gorgonian goes with it, which is very convenient. But no, I always trim near the top. And then when you have a piece, like a freshly trimmed piece from me, for example, you can cut off like the bottom ½ inch of the skin and leave the hard stalk. It's like a real branch inside. And you can actually put that into a hole with a drop of glue to kind of like secure it to a piece of rock if you wanted. But for me, to rubber band it gently or to zip tie it gently to a rock and just let it grow onto the rock is my preferred approach. And that's how I frag it. And it cuts so easy. There's no weird bleeding or anything like that. The coral doesn't freak out. I mean, obviously it didn't like that it got trimmed, but it almost is like a haircut. I mean, it's a snip and it's off. It's not difficult to cut through either. I've been using bone cutters. Emmanuel says, magnesium dosing with a doser, yes or no? I know it needs a shake before dosing, so I wonder how you dose it. Actually, no, I don't shake magnesium. I mix up a batch of magnesium. It's powder. I actually use magnesium pronto from Two Little Fishies. 1 little jar makes like 5 gallons. I mean, it's very economical, and I love the stuff, and I've been using it for many, many years. I take 120 ounces of water, which is not quite a gallon, and I take 10 scoops. So it's 1 scoop per 12 ounces if you care about the math. And that will then give me a volume, I want to say a gallon of, but it's not a gallon, it's less than a gallon, of liquid clear magnesium. I stir it, it turns crystal clear, and then my tank just doses that magnesium to the tank until the jug is empty, which lasts about 3 or 4 weeks. And then I just make a new batch. And I always have a batch ready. I always make a batch when the bottom of the jug is hit. And I rinse it, I wipe out the little bit of golden residue that's in the container so it's clean again. And I mix up another batch. And then I hook it up to the dosing pump. And I dose it once a day. I dose like 80 or 90 milliliters a day. And my magnesium tends to stay around the same number all the time. It only goes down when I forget to refill the jug. Rudsky says, are those still 11 clownfish after all this time? Yes, it's still the same 11. I do a head count from time to time. I try to find them. Right now I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's going to be some more somewhere else. Sometimes the best way to count your fish would be to like set up a camera in front of the tank, maybe a video, and when you feed the tank, all the fish come up, obviously, and then you can go ahead and freeze frame it and you can count that video. Or I used to feed on that end of the tank, the other end, and when I did that, all the clownfish would face that direction, and they'd all be lined up along the bottom here, just waiting for that food to fall. It was great, and that was another way I was able to count them. But yeah, still got all 11. Emmanuel, I would contact ESV directly. They may be saying shake well when you first get it because it was in a warehouse on a shelf for a very long time and you want to get it mixed up again. Or it might have been on a shelf at the fish store for a very long time before you bought it. But I used ESV for years. I used the alkaline and the calcium. I don't know if I ever used their magnesium. And I mixed it if I needed to. First I bought the quarts where they were done. And then I was trying to be more economical and I would make larger batches and I would mix it, shake it, and when it was done, I just used it till it was empty. I didn't shake it before I opened the bottle each time. I think it's sort of like, perhaps the instructions are saying to shake it because some people use it so sporadically, it's sitting on a shelf and it's settling out possibly. And so by them telling you you should shake it, you're kind of getting it back in suspension before you add some to your tank. But for someone that's using it daily, I mean, you don't shake your alkalinity, you don't shake your calcium. These are things people make a gallon at a time and hook up to dosing pumps and trickle into their tank for a duration. And while there are some people that will set up with like some kind of a magnetic stirrer that stirs their liquid with a little bead for 30 seconds, most people don't. And they get the right doses in their tank anyway. So I don't know that you have to keep shaking every single time you use it. But anyway, I don't shake mine at all, and that's the answer to your question, is that I don't shake it. Erie says, I think I'm saying that right, or maybe it's Lurie says, do you get black cyanobacteria? I get a lot on my sand after treating for dinoflagellates. Are you looking at it under blue lights or are you looking under white lights? Because if your tank is crazy blue, it may look black. But if the tank was white, it may look red. It may be brown, it may be green, it may be blue. Cyano comes in different colors, but if you need to treat the tank for cyanobacteria, you can use ChemiClean or you can use Red Cyano RX. These are two products that work really well to get rid of cyano within 3 to 5 days, and that way you can quit looking at it. Now you said you were treating your tank for dinos, and I'm assuming you mean dinoflagellates and not diatoms. And to get cyanobacteria as an after effect from fighting the dinoflagellates, I believe that would be possible. Hopefully you won't keep going through the cycle of going from cyano to dinos to cyano to dinos, because that would be heartbreaking. It's so difficult to enjoy your tank when you're constantly looking at these plagues ruining your sand bed and choking up the oxygen and hurting the corals you're trying to grow. So I would probably siphon out everything you can, and I would treat the tank for cyanobacteria. I would make sure that all your water parameters are dead on perfect, and plenty of flow, the right color light spectrum each day, and hopefully you can put these plagues behind you and start enjoying your reef tank. Yeah, I got it right. It's Rudsky. He says everyone calls him Rudsky. I don't know. Sometimes I just have to guess how you're supposed to pronounce it. No one knows how to say Milev's Reef either, so that's okay. Well, guys, we're pretty much down here at the bottom of all our questions. We've been talking for about an hour and 45 minutes. I think we'll just wrap it up. I again apologize for messing up the audio in the middle. I guess that's the chance you take when you're doing a live stream. Trying to make sure this thing is faced the right way and not on my skin. Today is water test Saturday. Please do test your water. Just kind of mention that briefly, but we really do want to test everything. And if you're not testing everything, why are you not testing everything? What is your real reason? And if you hate testing your water, get the Smart Stir. I sell it. It's like 30 bucks on my website, I think. And it's $6 shipping, so $36. And it will do the shaking for you. So you just put the vial in there, put the bead inside the vial, hit the button, and then you put in the right amount of tank water and you add the drops and it does all the shaking for you and changes the color automatically. It's so easy. I love the Smart Stir. Before that, I had a 3D printed one someone gave me as a gift like 4 years ago, and I refused to do a water test without the 3D printed thing. Then when the Smart Stir came out, I immediately moved to that. You plug it into a USB port to charge it for, I don't know, an hour or two, and then it stays charged for months. It's amazing. I love that thing, and I've got like, I don't know, 15 of them in stock. So if you're like, oh, I don't want to do my testing, it's such a hassle, get the Smart Stir. You'll suddenly like doing your water tests again. You'll know your numbers, and you can correct things before things go wrong in your tank, because once things go wrong, now you're spending time and money fixing everything because you were being lazy about water tests. And Caitlin said, water tests save lives, and she's 100% right. So do test your tank today. Test alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, phosphate, nitrate, salinity, temperature, pH. Know everything about your tank, so that way when you're looking at it, you can say, now I know why there's a problem, and you can make some small adjustment, whether it's making sure your dosing machines are calibrated properly, making sure the liquid in the reservoirs are filled, making sure that the tubes are not clogged or crusty, so things get in. And of course, make sure you're cleaning your protein skimmers, because if they're all dirty, they're not doing their job anyway. So it's important to do that. So please do all these things so that your tank can continue to be pretty and happy and grow and be healthy, so you can enjoy it. And then hopefully you'll start a YouTube channel and I can see your tank each week and see how things are going. Let's see, I think there may be one more question here. Hav says, I have a Royal Gromma and my 6-line wrasse is trying to kill it. What should I do? You're going to have to decide which one you want. The 6-line wrasse is actually a very aggressive wrasse, and it may continue to pick on other fish that you're adding to the tank. It's just the nature of the beast. An 8-line wrasse or a 4-line wrasse are a lot more friendly than the 6-line. I don't know why. They're just mean. So you may have to sacrifice and remove the 6-line and give it to someone else, or put it in a frag tank, or put it, give it to the fish store, so that way someone else that wants a 6-line can have it. But yeah, if you're trying to add other fish, you're going to probably continue to have problems with that 6-line wrasse forever. Shell Slinger, I'm so sorry to hear you just got here, because I'm ending the stream. But thank you guys for tuning in, and I will be back next week with a whole new looking tank, and hopefully we won't hate it too much. Bye, guys.